Please welcome Greta Thunberg. Much better. Just thank you everyone who is here. I'm so honored to be in this room with so amazing people, and give yourself an applause. This award is for all those millions of people, young people around the world, who together make up the movement called Fridays for Future. All these fearless youth fighting for their future, a future they should be able to take for granted, but as it looks now, they cannot. With our business as usual, we are currently on track for a world that could displace billions of people from their homes, taking away even the most basic living conditions from countless of people, making areas of the world uninhabitable for humans for parts of the year. The fact that this will create huge conflicts and unspoken sufferings is far from a secret. And yet, the link between the climate and ecological emergency and mass migration, famine, violations of human rights, and war is still not clear to many people. The changes and the politics required to take on this crisis simply doesn't exist today. That is why every single one of us must push from every possible angle to hold those responsible accountable, and to make the people in power act and to take the measures required. We who together are the movement Fridays for Future, we are fighting for our lives. But not only that, we are also fighting for our future children and grandchildren, for future generations, for every single living being on Earth whose biosphere we share, whose biosphere we are stealing, whose biosphere we are ruining. We are fighting for everyone, for you, for the people living in areas in the world that are already suffering the consequences from the first stages of the climate and ecological emergency. People who breathe toxic air, who drink contaminated water, who have to flee their homes because of climate and environmental related disasters. Indigenous communities whose lands and waters are being destroyed. People whose food and water supply is being threatened by environmental related catastrophes. Stronger and more frequent droughts, rainfalls, storms, or melting glaciers. Whole nations are now literally being left in ruins or disappearing underneath rising sea levels. People are dying, and yet so many of us keep looking away. The world has never seen a threat to human rights of this scope. So said the UN rights chief, Michelle Bachelet, recently during UN Human Rights Council in Geneva, referring to the climate crisis. She said, "The economies of all nations, the institutional, political, social, and cultural fabric of every state, and the rights of all your people and future generations will be impacted." This is exactly the clarity we need now from governments and the people in power. Right now, the world's emissions of greenhouse gases keep rising rapidly. The destruction of natural habitats are continuing at horrendous speed. Despite all the beautiful words and promises from our leaders, we are still moving in the wrong direction with unimaginable pace. It may seem impossible to pull the emergency brake, and yet that is what we have to do. But right now, I think there is an awakening going on. Even though it is slow, the pace is picking up and the debate is shifting. This is thanks to a lot of different reasons, but it is a lot because of countless of activists, and especially young activists. Activism works. So what I'm telling you to do now is to act, because no one is too small to make a difference. I'm urging all of you to take part in the global climate strikes on September 20th and 27th. And just one last thing. See you on the streets.
Thank you. If I can ask our wonderful leaders to just sit for a minute, because I want to say a few things to you. When I look at the school climate strike movement and its amazing young leaders, I have to confess, not only me, but Bill McKibben and a few others feel a little bit old. For me, in just over 10 years, I'll be considered like retirement age. But there is one thing I especially want to do when I turn 65 years old. Greta, I'm sure you and all the leaders here are going to be in very high demand by then. But I want to invite you all to my 65th birthday party. And I'd like to invite all the people in this room as well. It'll be a special moment of celebration, not because of my birthday, not for an award, but for something much more important. I want us to come together to celebrate one of the most important achievements the world has ever seen. We will celebrate that we, all of us here, all our friends from the Fridays for the Future movement, Amnesty International, 350.org, Greenpeace, the trade union movement, and many, many others, will come together, work hard, stay focused and undeterred, and we will celebrate that we did what it took to protect our world. We will look back on how we ultimately overcame our leaders' suicidal obsession with fossil fuels, and how we managed to arrest the rise in global temperatures and allowed the Earth to start recovering. We will celebrate how we managed to bring carbon emissions right down, how we kept ice where it belongs, how we kept the sea level safe and protected old countries going underwater. We will celebrate how amazing environmental and climate activists around the world persevered in the face of threats and showed us what it takes to live peacefully with the world around us. That's what I want to do, and what a party it will be. We will get to celebrate with the people of Tuvalu and all the Pacific Island states and all the small island states who still will say we have a country that we can live on. We'll celebrate with the people of Pakistan, Asia, Africa, Latin America, who can still say we still have clean water to drink. We will celebrate with communities in Africa who were able to stay together because climate-intensified desertification and climate-intensified drought, which is killing our people already, had been reversed. We will celebrate with the families in the United States whose communities survived because the wildfires stopped growing. We'll celebrate with the parents of children in China whose asthma became manageable when the pollution started dropping. And we'll celebrate with farmers in every continent around the world who could still be able to plant crops and feed us. You know what? In a world so bitterly fragmented, there should be one thing that brings us all together. That is the shared plight of all of us humans in facing the climate crisis. Imagine you were to look at the Earth from afar and think of us as puny, tiny humans fighting over whether it's worth saving our common home, our only home. Imagine the insanity of that. Because make no mistake, unless we act urgently, climate change will harm all of us. Greta, you and the Fridays for the Future movement have catalyzed and held up a mirror to our species. All of us need to rise up and take action. And I hope every one of us will join hands with the Fridays for the Future movement, starting with a global strike on the 20th and the 27th of September. Let's make this the biggest climate protest ever in the history of humanity. So I want to conclude by saying two things. Both of them are naughty. So the first thing I want to say is, if I was a dictator, and if I could make a decree on the Fridays for the Future movement, this is what it will be. I would say to you, don't let Donald Trump and the Bolsonaros of the world take away your childhood. Don't let... And as you prosecute this movement, as wonderfully as you've did, and as many of you have said in your comments, do it with love, do it with compassion, do it with integrity, and most of all, my decree would say, have fun in the process. The second thing I want to say is that to all those of you in this audience who work in communications capacities, whether for a government, business or NGO, you can learn a lot from this young people's movement in terms of how they communicate. They have a better sense of being able to take the BS and make it more accessible to much larger numbers of the people. I had a small experience marching in London as we were passing Downing Street, you know, where the cabinet meets. Two 12-year-olds picked up a sign saying, "You can get better cabinets at IKEA." Right? And two 14-year-olds picked up a sign saying, "Keep Earth clean, it's not Uranus." If our children are saying that the climate crisis is so serious that every Friday they will continue to make the voices heard 1 day a week so our politicians don't forget the need to act. Why should we, as parents, not set up a hashtag that says Saturdays for our children's future and ensure that moving forward, every Saturday, parents are urged to come out to put pressure on their banks to stop lending to fossil fuels, to start doing community actions in our community to educate people, because it's high time we as adults did half as much as what our children are doing, because that is our responsibility.